They contribute a lot in Cleveland and in North America, and their main areas of interest are Jewish education worldwide, Israeli education, and in particular higher education, and in particular humanities education, and social leadership.
Okay, so how do you see the influence of the work that you've been doing with your fellows at the Institute, giving them tools to be educational leaders? How do you see the impact of that on current Israeli society?
So, well, I think in two main ways. First of all, we stay in touch with our graduates. We, in fact, have a highly developed graduate unit, which is way beyond an alumni association. It provides training and advice over the course of a person's career, both in a group level and individually. But these people are really, they're all over the system. So from Chavrei Knesset, the chair of the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein, is a graduate of our institute. Ruth Calderon is a graduate. So from the Knesset to the Ministry of Education, where many of the senior positions are currently held by graduates. In fact, in the last month or two, a couple more very senior appointments have been made. But it filters right down through the system. You have heads of local education authorities. You have around 40 or so really outstanding principals of schools. And one of the things that's interesting about them is it's not just necessarily the position that they inhabit, but it's also their role that they play as change agents within the larger
Well, that's what I'm
system.
looking for, because, I'm hearing the thing where they've got status and power and position and so on, but what actually has happened that has impacted society and changed it in a way that you can say, well, this is...
Right. So there's a few niches which have kind of been colonized by, or created even by Mandel graduates. One, I would say, is this open Beit Midrash movement of people who are working on opening up Jewish texts to wider Israeli society. That whole movement and all those different institutions, some in Tel Aviv, some in Jerusalem, all over the country.
Not to be confused with the Reform movement.
Not necessarily. We have graduates who are of the Reform movement.
But this is a different sort of trend.
This is more of a native-born Israeli phenomenon.
Yeah.
So that's one type of area. But there's another area, I would say, that actually the area of educational technology is one in which many of our graduates are active, and they're doing some very innovative things there.
Is educational technology sort of a different name for apps on your cell phone?
It includes apps, but it also includes today much of the curriculum material that's used by, increasingly materials are online. Teacher training involves all sorts of communities online. So there's lots of interesting work being done there in educational technology. But I would also say that the pluralist attitude that we have within our system has meant that many of the people who go back to their communities, whether they be right-wing, left-wing, whatever you like, have brought to those communities a sense of responsibility for larger Israeli society. And I think that the kinds of institutions that you will go to, if you walk in the institution and you feel some of that, often you will find that...
listening to you, it's difficult to understand why Israeli society has been so steadily going downhill since you've started your program. How do you explain that? Or would you say, well, it's only because your program is running that Israel is still sort of exists even as a Jewish democracy. Otherwise, it would just have,
Right. Well, we're kind of smiling to each other as you say that, but the question of impact is a really big question for us. It's very difficult to measure in any kind of social initiative. Indeed, it could well be that if we hadn't been around, things would be much worse.
Difficult to conceive, but still. Or I mean, you're laughing, but or is your outlook just sort of a lot more optimistic than mine? And you're saying to yourself, well, why is he saying that? I mean, Israel's a great place. Why is he trashing Israel?
No, I think Israel is a remarkable place, and in many ways it is a great place. I chose to move here.
Yeah, sure, but I want to get beyond the platitudes. It's remarkable, great, so on and so forth. But, okay, so are you pleased with sort of the current dominant trends in Israeli society? The widening gaps between the rich and the poor, the extremities, this never-ending problem that we seem to never be able to solve with the Palestinians and human rights, or do you disagree with me?
No, I think you've painted a very accurate picture of some of our biggest challenges. I think the reason I may sound so upbeat is that my experience is when I get up in the morning.
Massive amounts of drugs.
That wasn't no. I didn't say. I didn't say that.
Obviously not.
No, the main issue here is that my daily experience. I get up, I read the newspapers, check on the internet, and it's very depressing.
Mm-hmm.
I get to work, and I'm surrounded both by the fellows themselves and by the faculty with people who are working day in, day out to make this place better. And these people are remarkable that once they leave the place, teaching, as we know from world studies, has one of the highest attrition rates of any profession. I think the average lifespan of a teacher to stay in the teaching workforce is only something like 4 or 5 years in many countries. The average, I mean. And what we find is that these people who have already given...
So very few people, you're saying, commit to education as a lifelong...
Well, it's a real problem. It's a very tough profession to stay in. The pay is not great. The respect from the community is not great. And yet you have these people who are highly talented. They could go anywhere. And they have gone anywhere, and they devote their lives to education. So I think one of the reasons I'm so upbeat is because I'm surrounded in my intimate circle by people who are really working very hard to make things better. One of the things that we do know, though, and this we know also from research around the world, is that one of the keys to changing education systems is by investing in the leadership. And if you change a school principal, many things follow. And so if you manage to have an impact on those people who are heading systems, then it trickles down, and they select people and promote people who are similarly highly motivated and talented. And so our investment is really to try and find those people who are going to be those people at the top.
The last time I heard that trickle down thing, I think was I saw it was Ronald Reagan, and he was saying that it's going to trickle down. But okay,
I don't think it works with economics the same it does with motivation.
I'm actually sure that you're right. I mean, if you've got a good, innovative, open-minded, creative principal for a school, and that school is going to get better. Do you also teach? But do you also give the tools to convince people to go along with you? I mean, if you're a principal in a school and teachers are sort of entrenched in their old ways of doing things, you give them those sorts of tools as well.
Right. So I think tools is an interesting word. I'm not sure if I'm happy with it 100%, but the idea of anyone who wants to really make a change, it's not something you can do on your own. You could be outstanding as a person, but if you want to bring people with you, you have to build coalitions. You have to be able to talk multiple languages to different stakeholders. So that's a huge part of our work. In fact, you've touched on one of the areas that I personally teach in with one of my colleagues, Dr. Chava Shane. We teach a course on argumentation in education. And one of the things that we try and address there is how to make your argument clear. Be clear about what it is that you're presenting. Who are your friends and enemies as you go and try and make this argument and be persuasive? And how do you stay true to yourself and be able to talk to audiences that can range in their interests?
I'm interested. Do you think that you could draft sort of an argument to convince the majority of Israelis that they should, pursue a certain ideological or political path that hasn't been done? Do you think that there's a way to build a bigger coalition in Israel around a certain idea or solution to current problems?
So first of all, I think that's eminently possible, and I think one of the ways to do it is not necessarily through politics. One of the deeper ways to do that may indeed be through education.
That's going to take a really long time.
It is. I hope we have enough time. I think we probably do.
You do think that we have enough time?
I think that education is one of the most powerful tools. You look at major movements, things which have changed, things which have become taken for granted. Many of them are based on very small numbers of people who are highly motivated, who have spread a message, from Christianity to the internet.
On a scale of 1 to 10, the Israeli education system is...
It's certainly not as bad as you think it is.
It's not?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it? Like a 6?
I'd give it a 6 or a 7, yeah.
You would?
And in fact, one of the things that's toughest about it is, in fact, those gaps that you mentioned earlier. At its very best, it's a 9 or a 10. And in its worst, it's maybe a 2 or a 3. And that's a real problem. I think that as a nation, we need to really make sure that those gaps are somehow getting closed.
Okay, let's hear third song you selected, which is Nick Cave, Into My Arms. This is a song that I know. Okay, tell us about it. Why'd you choose it?
First of all, it's beautiful. Nick Cave is a crazy talent. And one of the things I like about this is it actually touches on something maybe we'll speak about later on, is very theological.
Yeah, he's the son of a minister, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
He is, yes. You didn't know that?
No.
Oh, he's deeply steeped in Christian upbringing, and yeah, his dad, Australian, I think.
Yeah.
His dad is a minister, of a man of the cloth. I
Okay,
think.
that figures because first of all, I think in his performances he's very much like a Messiah figure. But the other thing is that this song is a very beautiful love song.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons I like it. It expresses emotions which I feel for very dear people around me. But
when you recently grew a mustache, did you harbor thoughts of doing so yourself?
No, it's not that.
Okay.
It's not that deep.
Okay, what's the second thing you wanted to say about
And
it?
the second thing I wanted to say is that this idea of not believing in an interventionist God, but if he did, I sometimes feel like that myself.
That you don't believe in
that I'm not. I'm
interventions.
quite an agnostic or a theologically challenged person, but I appreciate much of what religion and that kind of approach to life offers.
Okay, so we'll talk about that after we hear the song. Good. Okay, so you recently saw him perform in Denver.
Well,
You actually shook his hand.
well,
Was it electric?
he performed while I was in town. Yeah.
Okay. And
So he's really something.
on stage.
Yeah.
So there's a religious sort of experience
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Now you, I'm saying again, I think I'm right in saying this, that he was brought up in a religious sort of strict sort of upbringing, not, like yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't. My father wasn't a minister.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a very traditional, modern Orthodox religious Zionist home in London.
Where in London? In Golders Green or?
Well, actually, this is interesting. We started out in West London, in Ealing, and then we moved when I was 7 to Hendon, which is closer to Golders Green and the Jewish kind of ghetto or shtetl.
Okay, so and you already as a kid were very interested in philosophical, theological questions.
Yeah, not at the age of 7, but by the time I was in my teens, when I applied to university, I applied to study philosophy. And so I knew even at that age that I was kind of curious about big questions about the meaning of life and so on.
No, because obviously you've made some life decisions concerning your relationship with God and so on. You don't wear a kippah. I don't know how observant you are. You can't be very observant, obviously. If you
Well, we're actually pretty observant at home. I would say that we would be what Israelis would call masorti. I actually call myself. People have actually often asked me because I'm involved in Jewish education. People speak to me for a while and they recognize that I have kind of a fairly good grasp of Jewish literature.
But you're what's termed as a datlash. You're a dati l'shavar.
So I actually use the term datlaf. You heard that one before?
No. What is that? Okay, explain that one.
Ani dati lifamim. I'm sometimes religious.